Good day, everyone. We are now down to our last lecture series on listening. So, just a recap. So, we say listening is a communication skill, and as a basic macro skills, it is natural to every individual to acquire this skill, just like you. Like all other skills, listening also needs to be improved. So, for our next lesson, we shall be tackling about the ways on how to be an ethical listener and speaker. So, hi everyone, it is me again. So, you have no choice but to bear with me. And I am also here, the student icon that we used previously. Sabi niya, and I'm also here to help you understand our topic for today. Okay, so for today, we shall be discussing the ways on how to be an ethical listener and speaker. So the following discussions will enumerate common problems in listening, and as a speaker, how should we respond? It is an interesting topic, so let us start. So problem number one, tuning out dull topics. So we often have this kind of problem wherein we're tuning out dull topics. It cannot be avoided even with your closest friends. You do have dull topics. So how are we going to tune out that dull topics when we are listening to dull topics of our friends or our of the people whom we are talking with? So many listeners decide early in what topic is simply not interesting. However, it has been said that there are no uninteresting subjects, only un, uninterested people. Because the topic might be interesting for us. It's just so happened that our point of interest might not be the interest of the others. Hence, we say that it's not the subject matter that matters, wherein what matters there is the concern there is there are some people who are really not interested to the subject that you are telling or you are sharing. So how to remedy this? So here is the advice. So if you encounter people to which you think that the topic is dull or to which you think that subject matter is that interesting. So as a listener, listen for something you want or need. Even the topic is uninteresting to you, try to listen. Because little you did know, you might be showing some interest to it later on. At the beginning, it might be uninteresting to you, but later on, it might be interesting as well. Because again, there's some instances that may not, by that moment, we're not realizing how important that information that is sharing to us. And then later on, we're realizing, then you would say, and then you have a regret, dapat pala nakinig ako. Dapat pala I listen to what the person is sharing to me. Okay, so if there's an opportunity for us to have some information that which we think is not interesting for us and which we think ay magagamit natin in the near future, then try to grab that opportunity. Try to listen. Baka makuha mo yung interest niya. So remember, you can always find something value in what another person is saying. Just like what we mentioned before, that one of the benefits of listening is it widens your experience. So the second problem is paying attention. It's nothing to be courteous, but sometimes we take manners to an unfortunate extreme. Totoo yan, di ba? When we find someone's conversation boring, we pretend to pay attention, though our minds are 8,000 miles away. So it's now at the level of pretending, di ba? When we discuss about the level of listening, it is on the level of pretending. But there's some what sabi nga niya, we should not be doing it all the time. Okay? We shouldn't always do it all the time. The person whom you're talking with will notice it. So what should be done if the person you're talking with notice that you are not paying attention to what he or she's saying? So what you should do? So here's the advice. Sincerely pay attention, learn forward, make eye contact, smile, nod your head, and ask questions to show that you are listening. Diba? Although you're pretending, gumaganyan kang umingiti ka, you are showing still that you're still showing that you are interested pa rin. Good listening is not relaxed or passive. It takes energy to listen. Totoo yan. Minsan, di ba, we say nakakapagod na ang makinig sa kwentong paulit-ulit na lang. So next is the third problem is yielding to distractions. So outside noises or movements often affect our concentration, which is true. Just like during the online classes, there are some instances wherein makakarinig ka ng static sound, or you could heard sound of the animals, the dogs, the chickens. Those are the usual animal sounds, or even the sound in your house. Those are distracting, and sometimes it leads to distraction. Just like as I'm recording my lectures, you'll notice that there are some noises outside, that you heard some um, people talking outside. Okay, so I still continue. Why? Because it's a way of testing if you're really listening attentively or not. If you're just solely focusing on me and you disregard the noise outside. So it's an application of this discussion about listening, that regardless of the noise that I'm doing, regardless of the noise that this recording is absorbing right now as I record it, then it will test as to how you give focus on the discussion regardless of those noise. Okay. Then, for example, a window drop shut, someone sneezes, a book falls to the floor, etc., etc. All too often, we give our attention to these distractions instead of the speaker in front of us. So, what should we do? Choose a suitable environment in which to have personal conversations if you would like to. Then, you would like to have an intimate talk with someone, dinala mo sa bar, ay ang ingay sa bar. Do you think you can have an intimate talk with the person is in the bar, which is very loud? If you would like to talk, to have a heart-to-heart talk with someone, then bring the person in a place wherein both of you can be comfortable with talking to each other, and then you will be distracted with the different noises surrounding you. Then it's up to you. So there are some instances where in guidance counseling, there are some people who would want to just talk, let's say on the street, somewhere else, to which where they are comfortable with, diba, in guidance counseling. So regardless kung saan lugar, for as long as they are comfortable with the person whom they're talking with, regardless if there are distractions outside. So that depends actually. So learn to ignore the distractions, just like now. Um, if you heard different sounds as I record, then learn to ignore the distractions and then become a distraction yourself. Kasi if you will be distracted, if you'll be affected by the distraction, you yourself will be a distraction to yourself as well. Because the moment that you lose your concentration to the lecture, that means you are already a distraction to yourself. You are already a noise to yourself. Then next is criticizing delivery or physical appearance. It happens talaga no, na when there are some people that we don't want to listen to because we are distracted by the appearance. Sometimes the person is really good looking. Yun bin, chaon mo ang face, mga Korean, ang gwapo, ang ganda. So, you lose your concentration of what the person is saying because you already na-magnet ka na sa kagandahan, kagwapuhan ng kausap mo. Kinikilig ka na deep within you. You're no longer paying attention. So, is that a good listening? No, it's not, because although it glorifies you, you find happiness from seeing good-looking guy, good-looking girl, yet you're distracted because of that gorgeous look. And You yourself become a distraction to yourself because you're no longer paying attention of what the person is telling you. Okay, so many people abandon their goal listening habits when they become overly critical of the speaker's physical appearance or delivery. So there's some people who would just mind on how you speak. They are very much critical on that aspect. If the person does not speak well, they will not listen. If the person does not look good, they will not listen. The same true with if the person, the same is true sometimes if the person is good looking. Okay, or the manner of delivery. But I attended several seminars wherein our speakers came from Japan or came from Korea or came from China, and they are not that really eloquent. They are not really that good when it comes to speaking in English. And although they are expert in the field that they are doing, but the way they deliver it because of the language barrier. So if you are very much critical of the way they speak, then you will not be paying attention to them. But if you're very much interested on the content, because you're a content-oriented person, you would like to focus on the content of what they are saying, regardless of the way they deliver it, then you would eventually find enjoyment to it. But since there is a need for you to also be understanding because they come from a non-English speaking country and they are not as fluent as many of the Filipinos when it comes to speaking. So you should understand their situation, understand their cultural background, understand that they come from an English speaking country. So in my case, I enjoyed the lecture, the discussion when I attended when I attended seminar workshops wherein our speakers come from a non-speaking English country, wherein they're trying to speak English just to connect to us, just to convey information to us. So regardless of who the speaker is, this is what I mentioned to you a while ago. The content of the message is always far more important than the form of her or his delivery. Kasi tayong mga Pilipino very much critical on how the person says it eh. So be generous enough to overlook the difficulties of a speaker. Aside from being generous enough, it's also one way of showing your understanding of the person. Pay attention to what is said, not how it is said, because again, content matters. Don't use poor appearance or speaking style as an excuse for not listening. That shouldn't be, because again, content matters. It is the content that matters the most. So jumping to conclusions, there are some people who will jump to conclusions when listening. We often think that we know what a person's going to say before they have even finished speaking. Sometimes I'm like that. That wherein the person is just started to say something and I already know what the person will be telling us. And with that, sabi ko, hindi na ako makikinig. Alam ko na sasabihin niya. Which in fact, later on you realize na, I should have listened. Meron pala siyang nasabi na hindi ko alam. So that's the problem now if you're jumping to conclusions. So occasionally we are biased toward the speaker. If we don't want the speaker, then we will not listen. If we already know who the speaker is and we already know what the person is telling, will be sharing, then we will not listen. And so we close our minds to the speaker's message. So here's the advice in order for you to cope up with this kind of problem. So hear the speaker out, give the speaker a chance to speak and listen to the speaker attentively, because you might not know that there are a lot of things that the speaker might be giving you. Just like in my case, sometimes wherein I uh, I just jump to conclusion that I already know what the speaker will be saying. Okay, then later on, marami palang nadagdag. So it also happens sometimes to my students that you thought that you already know everything, which in fact, if you just listen attentively, meron ka pa palang maraming dapat malaman. And that's the regret that we should avoid. And understand their point of view fully before accepting or rejecting it. Because people do have their different opinions. They have varying opinions. And the number 6 problem that you might encounter in listening are the different interruptions. So do you spend most of your listening time actually listening, or do you spend it thinking what you want to say? Ulitin natin. Do you spend most of your listening time actually listening, or do you spend it thinking about what you want to say? If that will be the case, interrupting someone is an almost certain sign that you don't know or care about what the other person is saying. Kasi ganyan yung mga taong singit na lang ng singit. Interrupting someone. So here's now the piece of advice that we can do in order for us to avoid interruption. First, take time to think about what is being said before responding. Take time to think about what is being said before responding. Wait for an opening. When talk of opening, when the person starts, put yourself in their shoes. Try to feel, let's say, that you are being interrupted. So overreacting to emotional words, it's also a problem when it comes to listening. There are some people who are right after just they listen, they would overreact on what they listen. So let us be real. There are times that we react from time to time to certain words or phrases that push our hot buttons, which in fact, there's no reason for us to react. We're just overreacting. At such times, we might experience a strong emotional reaction that blocks out our ability to listen. Oftentimes kasi, di ba, we are also being affected of what we listen. That is why we tend not to talk or to share our views, or we just impede listening. So our overreaction tends to interrupt the speaker that we do not pay attention to what he or she is saying. Hence, this is now the piece of advice. Take time to think about what is being said before responding. Katulad ng advice rin kanina. Compose yourself. Try to control your emotion. Breathe in to calm yourself. Okay? Let's have an activity. Okay, so that ends our lecture. But this time, let's try to have a recap of what we discussed. So get a pen and paper, evaluate yourself using the listening questionnaire. So let us see. So score yourself using the scale below. Always, usually, often, rarely, never. So if you are doing this always, 1 point. Then if you never do it, that's 5 points. So the highest level is always, then the lowest level is never. Okay. So when listening to another person, I get distracted. Listen only to text, interrupt, assume the other person already knows, prejudge, tune out, ignore nonverbal cues. Okay. So let's see kung ano ang inyong mga checklist dyan. Try to give points on the following. Okay. So right after you do that, evaluate yourself. So if you scored 1 to 7, poor listener ka raw. If you scored 8 to 14, fair listener ka. 15 to 21, effective listener ka. 22 to 28, moderately effective listener. And 29 to 35, very effective listener. So compute now your score, and then let's see on your level of listening, kung ano ba kayong type of listener. So thank you very much once again, and see you for our next discussion. You fill in again your being with Sir Bachelor. Thank you.